conversation with you by saying, hello, you daring souls. And today, as always, I really mean it. Today's conversation is entitled American Jesus. And I promise if you stay with it until the end, I think you'll understand what I mean, and I think you'll get something really out of it. And I would love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think. So there's a little text button right there. In this podcast, you can send us a message or find us in person like many of you have done already and just talk to us. But until then, please be a part of this conversation. Stay with it till the end, and I can't wait to hear from you. Thanks for being a part of this.
This podcast is a presentation of Pioneer Dream, celebrating 30 years of moving stories for our corporate, nonprofit, and entertainment partners. We invite you, fellow misfits, to join the conversation with text, emails, or just messages in the comment section below. As always, you can share this podcast with anyone you think would get it by sending the link now. Thanks for listening.
Hello, all you daring mixed up mystics, and welcome back to the podcast. We're so thrilled you're here. I am joined by Miss Anjanette Webster. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm strangely comforted by your podcast voice. You're speaking.
Very comforting.
It is. Good times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We are, full disclosure, just pounding energy drinks.
We are. It is bad time.
It's allergies or something,
Yes.
and whatever it is.
Oklahoma, where the wind and everything comes sweeping down the plain.
And, you know, some people, when they get the allergies, they have like sneezes or coughs or they're runny eyes or itchy
and I mean, I get
stuff.
some of that, but yeah.
But most of what I get is just crazy.
You do. It's good. And I get
My spirit kind of leaves my body and kind of hangs out somewhere else.
It feels
fish tank
like
somewhere.
I mean, I get it not as bad as you, but from what you've described, it's sort of like doing drugs, but without the fun part.
Yeah, you just feel
space
lethargic and disconnected and high, but not the good high.
But do you also feel bad about yourself at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. No, that's an ongoing. So, yeah.
So it's an increased level of self-loathing?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good. Right. Yeah, I feel that way, but I think you're worse.
Because you're actually accomplishing less because you're lethargic, and then you beat yourself up for not getting more done. Yeah. So that's all part of it.
It's really a perfect combo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes you wish for summer, I guess. I mean, you don't want to hate the trees budding. No. Yeah.
It has been a minute since we've done a Mixed Up Mystics podcast.
It has.
We did the great interview with your daughter, Evangeline Jane Webster.
Yes.
And then a 2-part interview with your dad, Jason Elmore.
It's been a family
affair. But both of the interviews were super cool. So if you haven't, friends, listen to either one of those 2 interviews. They're well worth it. And so the interview with Evangeline, our daughter, is God at 13.
What God looks like at 13.
Yeah, and it's pretty fantastic. And it's,
that was
again,
cool.
very authentic and honest. And we didn't push her to prompt her or any of those things. It's just whatever she wanted to say about things.
Yeah, it was very thought-provoking for us, too.
And then the interview with your dad is also very insightful. You know, we picked it up as kind of the state of the church and our current moment in history. So he has, a 50-year run with being in the church at some level of leadership as a music pastor, youth pastor, and
he's seen a lot of changes over that time.
Pastor,
yeah, it's interesting.
So we kind of, in part 1, we kind of listened to his story and his origin story as a Christian, and then in part 2, we kind of widen out the lens and look at the church at large from kind of when he got into things in the 60s and then today. And so it's really interesting stuff. And
I've had a lot of people tell me they really liked it.
Especially by the end of the second part of that interview, there's some really dynamic stuff in there that's, I think, really insightful and encouraging, and all of it's very heartfelt. So
yeah, people should definitely go back and listen.
This will be nothing like that. This will be very unauthentic.
Oh, good. We're going to do some lying.
We're just going to make some stuff up. No, yeah.
We're going to be lying.
I'm actually, I have been not in a focused way, but I have been writing some stuff that I still don't really know what will become of it, or how we'll use it, or what we'll do. But generally in the writing stuff, we do things for very broad audiences, and same thing for our music, and same thing for pretty much everything we do.
Because they have to appeal to lots of different types of people.
Yeah,
is that what you mean by broad?
We're trying to connect with a lot of people a lot of times. And then we got into this weird podcast, which is, kind of directly focusing on Christianity and religion and faith and all those
This
things.
weird podcast, the second title.
So that has kind of, I think, maybe inspired me to put down some other thoughts and things that would kind of just wouldn't leave me alone.
That's cool. Are you going to let me read it or no?
Well, maybe. We'll see. I don't know where else it's going to go.
Ouch.
But it feels good just to write it down.
Good.
And then that kind of gives you a certain sense of relief. Oh, this is out of your head now. It's on, I was going to say on paper, but it's
I know
really
that's
not.
how you process your thoughts.
Yeah. And so I was coming across this one chapter that I've been kind of working on and off as I've had time over the last couple of weeks. So it's been a little intermittent, but it goes back to, I don't know what you'd really call it. I'm going to call it a picture to stay away from mysticism in this moment. So we were at home.
Did you say a picture to stay away from mysticism?
Well, I was going to say it was kind of I don't know, it's an image or a vision, or that just made it seem like it was bigger than it probably should be at this moment.
Yes, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it'll make sense in a minute. So anyway,
Okay.
a while back, I rarely do I ever get a chance to watch TV alone, because normally it's what we do together as a family, after dinner or something like that. We might watch a couple shows. And
A
so
lot of
it's,
Gilmore Girls. And
oh my gosh.
Hey, that's a sweet show.
And
but yeah.
it's almost always viewing by committee.
Yes.
And that's okay.
But we do like a good sitcom, too.
Yeah. And so we watched a lot of little different programs. Well, this night happened to be a night where Evangeline had already gone to bed and you were taking care of something else. So I was doing my own thing and I'm watching baseball. So that's how you know I was alone. And so I'm watching, I'm watching the Cubs and some forgettable game, but it was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
And in the midst of watching that game, just kind of out of nowhere and unrelated to anything I was looking at or watching, this image or vision or whatever popped into my head. And it was like, sometimes when you have things, we've talked about this before, but sometimes when something comes, I think from a divine sense, instead of being like analog or linear, like a landscape
in real time,
it comes down like a deposit. Like you get the whole, it's like a download.
Yeah, download.
It comes down as the whole file at one time.
Yeah, it's like Matrix when they're teaching Neo some fighting.
I do Kung Fu.
Yeah, he goes, I know Kung Fu. Yeah. They just like put it in there and he doesn't have to train and do all the time. It just goes, and there it is.
So that's what this was. This was a whole picture at one time. And in this picture, there's a kind of short, portly Asian man. And he is in a sequined jumpsuit, white jumpsuit. You can already kind of see where this is going. So he's in this jumpsuit and he's kind of portly. He's kind of lunging forward with one leg and, all this kind of stuff. He's got the sideburns and even though he's kind of balding on top and was not balding, he's got kind of longer hair with what's left.
Okay.
And he's got the sideburns and he's got the large oversized sunglasses on. And he's kind of leaning into the jumpsuit with one leg and kind of swinging an arm. And then he's just throwing out all these catchphrases, the thank you very much, so he's obviously, it's
like
almost
Elvis?
more of it's almost more of a caricature of Elvis because it's so bad than an impression of Elvis. And this look in his eye is not so much one of confidence, but more of looking around at the people that would be seeing him as if to say, is anyone buying this? Is this coming over?
Yeah.
And it is, and it's working. Huh. People are flocking to it. People are really loving it.
So he's really a caricature of that, but people they're buying.
They're embracing it. And even though he's fully aware of what he's doing. And so I immediately knew in my heart, mind, or spirit what that was. And it's the American Jesus. So in the same way that this caricature of Elvis by this Asian man, short, fat Asian man, has very limited resemblance to the actual king of rock and roll. The American Jesus has really very limited or very little resemblance to the actual person of Jesus.
A lot of times, yeah.
And yet it's all about the audience. It's really all about the hunger or the want in the audience, what we are willing to accept or what we're willing to swallow or what we're willing to go with. Yeah. And there is a large part of our population that is okay with this caricature of Jesus because it fits into so many other things, allows us to do so many other things.
I mean, it's close enough.
It is. And so you can...
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, so in the same way that you can, in the case of this little, impersonator, just throwing out these catchphrases. He doesn't have to sing any songs and sound like Elvis. He doesn't have to have the personality or the grandeur of Elvis. He doesn't have to have the innate spirit of Elvis or any of that kind of stuff. All the stuff that makes Elvis Elvis. He doesn't have any of that. He just has a couple of these kind of catchphrases he can throw out. And so in the same way, American Jesus is kind of like that. You paraphrase certain scriptures, you paraphrase certain parables, you paraphrase, and then after a while, you can begin to put words in the mouth of the caricature. You can begin to make the caricature say the things you want them to say and do the things you want them to do, because now you're leaving the actual persona of this person. Yeah. And the more acceptance you get, the further away from it you can get. Yeah.
And I think that's probably the danger in it, like in this little vision or download that you had. It's just close enough that people go, oh, okay. I mean, that'll work.
It's a kind of Jesus. It's a kind of faith. It's a kind of gospel, but it's not the gospel. It's not authentic. Yeah. And we've been headed this way for a long time within America. So we have all this folklore in America, that we kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we're this one nation under God, and we have all this stuff about how we were born as a nation, and we can really buy into this kind of manifest destiny, this kind of manifest presence of a country set apart and all that kind of stuff. And
they get intermingled.
Yeah, and so we have a Western gospel. So the challenge is the gospel itself and spirituality and religion and faith are really supposed to be the filter that everything else flows through. Mm-hmm. But when you contaminate that filter and you augment that filter with Western or Americana or whatever, then it changes what gets in, and it changes what we accept, and it changes the whole thing. And it gets very convoluted in that process. And we're seeing that. So I think we've seen that in our history from that kind of Puritan stance and the rules and regulations we put on people, the way that we kind of then allowed religion to be used as a tool for other, for the things we wanted to accomplish. And then we married that with politics. And now that we've got that going, it's very confusing as to, will the real Jesus please stand up?
Well, that's been happening a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, people have always been using Jesus and religion, for their own purposes. And it's a dangerous place to be. And we were having a conversation with someone recently, and something came up when we were talking about some of these things, and that we thought were pretty evident. The idea that a lot of people had been hurt by religion or church, and that for some people in younger generations, ours and younger, that they want to believe in God and they want to connect with who Jesus is, but they've really been hurt by the church, and so they're afraid, and and so in a way we've had to, in some ways, disassociate with it. And this person who had been like a longtime believer didn't get it at all. Right. Said, what? Yeah. Like this, like, what? Yeah. And I said, and I didn't really understand what they were saying, because I said, yes, have you not noticed that a lot of people are angry at the church or have been hurt by it? And also in a way that some things in politics have kind of gotten intermingled with Christianity. What are you talking about? And I just thought, oh my God. And I remember you handled it so well. Oh. And what I did so that I wouldn't implode as I walked out of the room, and I collected myself. I was like, Lord, help me. But that I did. I think it's become very common, and not everyone even realizes how much of it is mixed in.
Well, that's part of it too, right? So in this invitation, this American Jesus thing, part of that is this, as a side benefit of that whole thing, is the persecution element. So the idea that somehow the church is being persecuted.
That our faith is under attack.
Yeah, and always. Like, and we're always the ones under attack. You and I
Do you feel like your faith is under attack? I don't.
You and I live in Oklahoma. And we happen to live in a county in which 80% of the registered voters are of, well, you can just, I was going to say of a political party, but it's obvious. Yes, it's the Republican Party.
We're known for that,
It's the Republican Party. Yes. And that's fine.
And the pollen levels are 120%. So.
And that's not a problem, but 80%, so, beyond a supermajority, it's just a lot of people. I don't even think they bother counting the votes anymore. And so, but the amount of time and energy and focus for our people around us, who somehow feel like they're under attack in this whole process when you're 80% of the population base.
Super majority.
So that's, so in America, it's the same way. Yes, the trend for Christianity and faith and religion at large has been in a decline. And we'll talk about that for a second in a minute. But the idea that you're somehow under super attack all the time, is amazing. And never really seeking to take any ownership of it. So the numbers for this have been dwindling, and so we have to ask ourselves, well, why? And not just why, but what role do we play in it? And that's the part that we don't ever want to see or take notice on. Have there been things like you were mentioning in the abuse of the church and the abuse of all this that that have played into this and have made people want to walk away? Have the large-scale public hypocrisies that we've been involved in, do we own some of that? Is that on us? The misrepresentation of Jesus and the person of Jesus, do we own any of that? And we have not wanted to take any responsibility for that. So if the numbers are dwindling, for Christianity, we have to say, well, isn't that us? Is that saying potentially we're not doing a very good job? We're not representing who Jesus is, because when Jesus was on the planet physically, people flocked to him. People couldn't get enough of him. People, even sinners and saints alike, could not get enough of him. We don't represent that aroma at a very decent level, and I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah. I definitely do. And I mean, that's it. I mean, we all would have personal responsibility in that. One thing that helped me a little bit with that, I used to feel bad about, or I feel bad now about some of the ways that I probably represented Jesus 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. I feel bad about it too.
You feel bad? Stop. You should feel bad about your own crap.
Yeah. I'll look at that later.
By point, we have evolved and things have changed, and that's okay. But think we've all been guilty of that. Yes. It's something that's come about over time and over decades.
Yes.
And I think being able to talk about it.
But I think we also own it. I think we recognize.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would say I'm embarrassed by that now.
I think at some level we've done what we can in some of our friendships and relationships to
say we're sorry.
Make amends for that. So some of that's been either by direct statements of saying, hey, back in the day, yada, yada, yada.
Back when I was in high school,
or it's just by being, loving and kind to them now in a way that says or shows without so many words, yes, I love you and I'm sorry for anything we had that I miscommunicated in the past.
So what do you think, are there ways that we can help separate the real Jesus out or from that American Jesus caricature?
Your dad.
What can we do?
Your dad used to do, used to talk, especially early on when he was first got into, actually having a church and being a preacher and all those kind of things.
Preacher.
That's
I know. That's a funny term. A pastor, preacher. Yeah.
But
preacher.
He kind of coined this phrase for us anyway, which was the spirit of religion. So something that was apart or different than a relationship with Jesus, a relationship with God. There was this culture that came into play as well. And that culture would sometimes look like Jesus, almost like the caricature of Elvis here.
And that's dangerous.
It was dangerous because it kind of did all the things that spirituality and faith would do really without Jesus. And so in the midst of this, he would talk about how the culture of Jesus really gets away from the person of Jesus, and that can be a very dangerous place to be. And so he kind of came up with this little test or description of it where he would say that the things about religion are, it's something that immediately seems right. Yeah. But under closer inspection or under closer thought, actually goes counter to the truth of the gospel.
Okay, right.
And the longer you stay in it actually gets you further away from the person of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that was his test for things. So things would come up. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why don't we do this practice or that practice or have this building or that building? Mm-hmm. And so he would spend a lot of time looking at that and say, that on the surface that seems right, but if you really look at what it's saying here, it's actually counter to that. So I think that's kind of this thing. Mm-hmm. it does take, I think almost all of this does, it does take getting quiet, being honest, and looking at things. Mm-hmm. It does take, I think, asking, in prayer for help to see these things on our own. What are the things that we're doing? How do I separate politics from my faith? How do I let you, Jesus, be the governor of my politics?
Yeah.
How do I not commingle these things? How do I let you be the governor and not my Western culture, American culture? How do I let you help me love people and see them as equal to me, even if they don't happen to live here, or be part of my same political party, or those kind of things?
I think yes, and all of what you said, and I think it requires reading about Jesus, reading His words, and asking God to sort of show us what was meant by that, and knowing Him well enough on our own that when this other party line or this caricature comes around, we will get the sense. It's just like if somebody said, that Jay, he's really, kind of braggadocious, and he's always like pumping himself up and not really helpful. I'd be like, no, Jay's not like that. He's very humble and very wise and always helpful. I mean, I know I'm trying to make you feel good, but my point is, if I didn't know you very well and I wasn't spending any time with you and I didn't have that friendship, I really wouldn't know. Yeah. And if I was only getting my information about you from somebody else or other sources, other people who had opinions about you, I think that's the danger.
I think there are a couple of things you can do that are really, really helpful in all this and have been very helpful for you and me. And that's to be around lots of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just the people from your church, not just the people from your political party. Be around other people, because that's critical to seeing different things and being exposed to different things and finding what is the truth. And I think when we ask, we do have this confidence that if we say, okay, God, I really want to find you. And this has been our prayer before on a lot of occasions. I don't need you, God, to be who I want you to be. I need you to be who you are, and I need to know who that person is. And so when we seek the person of God, not the caricature of God, not the image we have in our own minds, not the image we've made after ourselves, when we seek that God, then I think He's kind enough and wants to be found. He will help us in that process. So there's that. And then I think and this is brave and this is challenging and it's difficult, but we need to operate from a standpoint of making the culture in America, making our love of America, making our politics fit through the filter of Jesus and not the other way around.
Oh, yeah,
and so right now in America, we are pushing the gospel through the filter of America, through the filter of Western world. Yeah. And that's such a dangerous place. And it's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we were guilty of, everybody has been guilty, I think, of taking the parts of Jesus in the gospel and it kind of working its way into our story for what we hope for. Yes. I mean, an example of that, and we were younger and we were doing our best, and I don't think our motives were for fame or money, but we kind of grew up under this idea that, well, if you believe in Jesus and you're creative, you've got to go out and do these huge exploits to win people to God and to show all these things, and you've got to have a huge platform, and you've got to be touring and have your own TV show. And we kind of grew up in that. And when the truth is, when you look at what Jesus did and what He has asked, it seems like, of our life is, no, just help the people on your street. Just try to show people that you're at school with or at work, that they're loved. Yeah. And it's so simple. So I think everyone has been guilty of taking parts of that, of Jesus or the story, that mythology, and making it convenient for ourselves.
We used to say, we came across this thing probably about 20 years ago, and I think your dad maybe even referenced it, when we were interviewing him, having this conversation with him. Mm-hmm. But we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and we did what we would call big church. So it was a huge band, and it was and our corporate services, our Sunday morning services, were a big deal.
Yeah, like 2-hour big production.
Even though even though we were in that highlight moment where people were dressing casual and we had a cool building and it was not traditional, it was still really big church. And we were very sincere in it. And then I remember having this moment where, people were kind of flooding in, and we were going to be there for anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and it was a big deal, and all that kind of stuff. Oh my gosh! And people just were loving it and everything. And then I remember having this moment, this revelation, and your dad and I talked about it, and we even talked about it in a service, where God said, "You know what? I'm just so jealous for what happens on a Sunday morning. I wish people loved me as much as they love the Sunday morning experience." Yeah. And that was him, in a sense, saying, you love this formula, you love the rock band, and you love the big music, and you love the whole thing and all that. But,
but what if you could get to that?
Yeah, what about me? And I think that's kind of where we are with Americana right now. I think God is jealous for the patriotism. I think he's jealous for the love of America. And it's funny. So if you're listening to this right now and you're pissed, that's a sign. No, that might be the sign.
Yeah.
That is our first love.
Yeah.
That is our first moment. And I am in no way tearing down America. This is my tribe.
Oh yeah.
This is the place that I love this country. I love living here. Yeah. And I love everything about living here, from the culture and the rock and roll to everything, the freedom and all that stuff. But the first love for us and the filter that we view everything through is the person of Jesus.
Yeah, and that has to be more important.
Yes,
and they're not. It's not a together thing.
Right.
I mean, we joke about it. It's like, for God so loved the world. For God so loved America, and it's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
It's a very dangerous place to be.
But we've mixed and mingled these
things. It's
a
counterfeit to who Jesus really is, and that friendship and relationship.
Well, here's the sad part of it, and I think the difficult part of it is I often look at the church in America as almost being like a teenage girl, and whose house happens to be in the middle of the block.
Okay.
And all she really wants is what all the other girls have.
Yeah.
She wants the football quarterback boyfriend. She wants the new car. She wants the prom dress. She wants to be accepted.
That's natural.
And that's the American church. We want to look like we want the prosperity that everybody else has.
Yeah.
We want the look that everybody else has. We want the acceptance that everybody else has.
Yeah. It's easy to sign on for a Jesus he thinks is going to bring you all that.
And meanwhile, we're missing all the treasures that are actually in our house, all the things that really make us special. We're casting all that aside in order to seek out the things that the world already has.
Yeah.
And
well, that's just like, remember back, for those of you guys who did some, I was raised Baptist, so got some good Bible in. Yeah. But I always liked the Old Testament, and even though there was, some disturbing stuff in there. Yeah. But the stories and pictures were really interesting. But do you remember back when King Saul was brought in? So King David is sort of chosen by the prophet Samuel to lead the Israelites.
Right.
And he knows that it's happening, but at the time... but the people were tired of waiting.
Yes.
And so they looked around and they were like, well, we know we have this anointed kid that's going to grow up and lead us eventually, but we want to be like all of the other countries. And so they looked around, and all the other countries that were around them, even though they were supposed to be a new thing and the special people of God, they all had kings.
Right.
And they said, well, we want a king. We want a king like the other countries.
Yes.
It looks so cool to have a king. And that's why God allowed, probably, for people to be able to see that it was not going to work. Yeah. They allowed King Saul, who was good looking and wealthy and
tall and good looking.
Tall and a big leader like we expected. He's bigly, as we say. And everybody loved him. And very quickly, he began to stray away from God and lead the people that way. And their hearts were focused on the king instead of God. Yeah. And then he went cray-cray, which was bad. Right. But the whole point of that is that
all of our hope in that.
The Israelites, or that group of people in that story, wanted to be like everybody else. They want to have a king. You want to be like, how's that going? Yeah. And we all.
And what's so funny about this? Even before it happened, I'm just now remembering all this stuff. Even before it happened. Samuel warned them and said, you don't know what it is to have
a king. We're going to do this differently.
He's going to take your sons. Yeah. He's going to put them in armies. He's going to tax you and take what belongs to you. He's going to take your daughters. That's right. Everything you have is going to be his.
Yeah. And you think that sounds neat.
And we wanted it.
Yeah.
And we were willing to pay that cost.
And what did God say? God said, okay.
Yeah.
Just like you would, if you had that teenage girl, you'd be like, okay, yeah, you want to try all that?
But
and
here, I mean, the only way to know what is happening around us, the only way to have spiritual sobriety is to put this other filter first before religion, before the church you go through, before the country you belong to, before the political party you belong to. That's the only way to have that, is to say, okay, this person before all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so...
And that's having the filter of, and it's like we try to be careful about using fancy phrases that we grew up with, but we talked about being part of the kingdom of God.
Yes.
And so it's kind of fancy spiritual terminology, but the idea is, I am an American, and we were very fortunate to be born here, and we're proud of that. Yeah. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But first and foremost, we're part of God's kingdom.
Yes.
And that includes everyone.
Yeah.
And that's the filter that has to be first before all the other things.
That's the filter that causes us to literally want to love everyone, even the more difficult ones, even the people who disagree with us, even the people who don't like us.
Yeah.
That's the filter that causes us to walk in humility, instead of being braggadocious and mean-spirited and ugly.
Yeah.
That's the one that causes us to want to be gentle and be quick to listen and slow to speak, instead of wanting to fight everybody all the time.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you do? So here's the point. Here's a point that I struggle with, and maybe other people do too. When I think of that caricature, I feel like all of us are able to be deceived, but I feel like for the most part, we have been able, hopefully, to hold on to what we would feel is a true version of the gospel. I don't know for sure. I know that someday when we get to heaven, we'll be wrong about lots of things. And we'll be like, oh, okay, so I don't mean we have it right.
Yes.
But how do we continue to love people that have bought tickets to that fake show? That is very difficult for me.
Yes,
it's so much easier for me to love somebody who's never known God and is really hurting and is humble and open. Mm-hmm. But the people that have bought that suit for that caricature and are bringing him treats on stage and throwing flowers at his feet, I really struggle.
Yes.
Because I want to be like, can you not see this?
Well,
that's hard for me.
That's us putting that filter first. I think if you look at the teachings of Jesus, and we've talked about this before too, but the 2 or 3 times in the teachings of Jesus and the parables of Jesus, he chooses to use the symbol or analogy of the Samaritans as the good guys.
Okay, remind everybody of that.
So the Samaritans were hated by the Jews, literally hated. So in a time of conquest, when all the Israelites were taken into captivity, the Samaritans came in and occupied their land, the given chosen land, what we call Israel. And so that was the land they were promised by God. And so these people came in and they moved in and built houses and lived there while Israel was in captivity. So when they got out of captivity, they came back and then
back home
they said, no, you didn't.
So they were the occupiers.
Yeah. So they were so hated. And yet in multiple occasions, Jesus uses the Samaritans as the good guys, the heroes in the parables.
Oh, yeah, that's good perspective.
Yeah. And so that's his point. That is him realigning some of that. That's him, and then that's Paul saying, even while we were still his enemies, even while we were still stuck in our filth, he loved us and did this for us. When we had nothing to offer, we still have nothing to offer. He chose to do that.
I have to be willing to see myself in that and to know that I am capable of that as well.
When we were coming up in the 80s and 90s and stuff, and they wanted to, they would do all the Christian programming and stuff, and they would talk about, the disregarded or the people, the outcast. It was always people smoking and drinking. And now that's us.
And the homeless. We always see the poor people.
It's always the people listening
sleeping on a mat.
People listening to rock and roll, people who were smoking, people who were drinking, people who were partying.
Those are the ones who needed
Those
to be
were
saved.
always the outcast people.
Sure.
And now but the statement of those videos and the statement of all those pictures were, these people are the object of God's affection. These are the people that God desperately wants to reconnect with. These are the people that God is desperate to be with.
Yeah.
And so seeing our, quote, enemies or those people who oppose us in that same light as people that God is desperate for, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And then two is this thing we've talked about on another episode, which is I already know that when I die, that I get to heaven, and so maybe there's this moment of clarity. Now you see everything. All the mysteries are resolved. All the things you have full understanding, full insight. All the things that were once kind of shaded now are clear. So in that moment, I will see clearly that I was wrong about a lot of things. Yeah. I would have been wrong about things I thought spiritually or theologically. I'll be wrong about things I thought about politically. I'll be wrong about a lot of things. And so I am currently wrong about a lot of those things, even in this very moment.
We just don't know it yet.
And yet, in this day, I have felt the presence of God. I feel his presence talking to you now. I have felt his presence today, trying to get my mind right multiple times today. I have done good things today. I have encouraged other people. I have loved other people. I've done good, motivated by him and with his help and with his effort. So as wrong as I am currently right now, he still loves me, and he has chosen to not withhold himself from me, and he is still using me to do good despite all that. Yeah. So in that way, I can turn around and do that to people who I strongly disagree with. And even if I think that they're being used to misrepresent the gospel, I can still choose to love that person. And it's not easy. I mean, those things are, especially for, where it feels like someone's confusing people about the gospel, or potentially.
You feel defensive. I feel
potentially turning people away from the gospel by what they're saying and doing.
Don't represent my friend like that. Well, for me, it's helpful with your analogy to imagine some of the people that I know that are really wrapped up in all of this right now.
Yes.
The ones who've bought tickets for the American Jesus show.
Yeah.
They're on the front row.
Yeah.
And knowing that God loves them as deeply as he does me, and as deeply as somebody who's suffering right now, and seeing them through that lens. And perhaps, in the analogy, there's a curtain or a point where that American Jesus, is revealed for what it is.
Yes.
Maybe they just haven't seen behind that curtain yet.
Yeah, that wig will come off.
Yeah,
that
costume's
accent,
gonna bust.
The Asian accent reciting American lines. You're going to hear that.
They'll
at some
figure
point.
it out.
I think that's such an important part.
Of timing, that helps me.
But if we can't separate Jesus from our political party, or if we can't separate Jesus from our nationality, or we can't separate Jesus from our personal congregation or denomination, then that is a problem. If Jesus cannot stand above that in our lives, if Jesus can't stand above our diet, choosing what we eat and what we don't eat and all that stuff, then that is a problem.
Well, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I mean, if he's not that lead factor, then we have a very significant issue. We have what we would call idols.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Got to it first. No, it's what I was reminded of, speaking of the Old Testament. And that's, we always think, they had idols, meaning like they would actually craft a god that looked a certain way. Right. Like the children of Israel, when they got tired, it's always about when we get tired of waiting for God and we make up our own solutions. Right. The same thing that happened with King Saul. And isn't that relatable in life, right? But the children of Israel are on their journey through the desert, and Moses says, God's going to rescue us. It's going to be fine. So Moses goes up to the mountain to hear from God, spend some time with God. Is that when he got the 10 Commandments? I can't remember. I mean, we didn't watch that this Easter, so the first tablet, part one. Anyway, and then he was up there so long, which makes me laugh because it's probably just a couple of days. Wow. And then his brother's down there. His brother Aaron, this story always makes me laugh. And he comes down and they're like, "Hey, man, I don't even know if Moses is coming back. And then Aaron's like, yeah, you're probably right. Like, nice vice pres. He's there. And then he goes, they're like, why don't we just make ourselves up a god? And he's like, okay, cool. And so they all brought their jewelry, and then they make a golden calf, and then they all start worshiping that. So in the time that Moses like went to, take a break, get some info from God and come back down, he comes like, what is going on? So they actually created an idol, which is such a picture. But I mean, that's what we were taught, and it really holds true. Anything in our heart and mind that we raise above the knowledge of who God is and who Jesus is, and we allow to become more important, is an idol. And that can be anything. We think, we don't have those. Like, oh yeah, we do.
And in this moment of poetic sobriety, Paul says they exchanged the glory of God, who they were called to be, the people of God, this chosen people. They exchanged that for the image of a cow that eats grass.
That's right. And isn't that great?
Made by their own damn hands.
Exactly. They're like, let's make a god out of a cow.
And so, yes.
And we're like, they're so stupid. And you're like, wait, I'm doing that.
So we have the idolatry of America. We have idolatry of the American myth. We have idolatry of the political party. Mm-hmm. We have the idolatry of the finances and this whole gospel of prosperity and all that stuff.
We had the idol of destiny and a purpose-driven life and all those things that became too important. And they seem good. It's like going back to that formula. They're so close.
Yes.
That's what's dangerous. It's like when you're walking, this is like math and visual spatial for me, but if you're walking straight on a path, but 1 degree at a time.
What does Bono say?
A little bit off, a little bit off, a little bit off, and before you know it, man, you're lost.
I think Bono says the most dangerous idea is the one that's off by 5%. Oh
God, isn't that? So
there's 5 degrees off,
and
you're
talking to somebody and you're like, yeah.
No.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so we do that. We have exchanged our glory. We have exchanged what we have been given. We have exchanged the life of God for the glory of a cow that, eats grass. And that cow is America. And that cow is politics. Yeah.
But yet, do you realize how many people, like probably a lot of the people that are listening to this are not going to at first understand what we're saying, and that doesn't mean that everybody has to accept it. These are just conversations, but I mean, this is some offensive shit. Is what I'm saying.
If I'm wrong, and I can be, if I'm wrong, then I will challenge you, listeners, to simply ask God to show you if this is right or wrong.
Okay, yeah, that's
to show you if there
I
is.
thought you were going to say, "I'll challenge you to a duel." I was like, seriously?
No, ask God to show you if there's a short man underneath that wig and sideburns.
Oh, that's good.
Ask God to show you if there's somebody behind those sunglasses, or if this is the real thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be. That's such a great test and such a great visual. You really should write about that picture because you're such a good descriptive writer. That would help people. But maybe for you or for me. My Jesus, my Asian Jesus, what did you call him? The American Jesus. Maybe it's not the American Jesus for me, but where in my heart is there a Jesus in a fake suit?
Yeah.
Like where in my life?
Well, because we have everything is responsive, so, and as we say, extremism promotes more extremism. So if you're met with extremism, your response generally is extremism. In response to that. So, if we are combated by this thing on one side coming at us, our response is generally to go the other way. And so in America right now, and as we talked about on the Dreamers Live podcast, the last Dreamers Live podcast, we talked about, isn't there any room in the middle? Why do we always have to do one or the other? Sure. Isn't there a way to be fiscally responsible but also compassionate?
Yeah.
Isn't there a way to secure the border and also look at the entire picture, not just, be on this one side of stuff. And so we get forced into that because that's what extremism does. And as we joke, I'm stuck in the middle with you. So I think your point is valid. We have to look at our own lives, and it is a difficult thing. And I think this is where the whole thing about being honest and being quiet and praying and asking is the first step, and then being with other people. So you can have this conversation, and not just one person, and not just people who agree with you, but to say, okay.
You ever think about this?
You ever think about this and this, that, and the other? And so, it's okay for you to look at your party and say, this is not right. It might be of the two choices that you have, and if you have to pick one, you could say, okay, this is okay, but you're not required to defend and buy everything they're selling.
Thing. No, exactly.
And it's okay to say this is not okay.
Yeah.
And it's also okay to ask your party or require your party to do better than it's doing right now on all those things. But yeah, it starts by saying, okay, God, help me to see this, and because I can trust those truths that Jesus has said, that if I seek you, I will find you. If I ask, you'll answer. If I look, and then engage people in that conversation. And my guess is that there will probably be some insight for you. You may not see things the way we see them, but we desperately just need to A, find the authentic Jesus, and B, to embrace who he's called us to be as humans, so that we're not trading this in for politics, for a party, for a country, for a thing that limits what is really amazing inside of us.
Yeah. And it's interesting because on the Mystics podcast, we don't talk about politics all that often, but here lately, it's been such a part.
It's almost inescapable.
Of spirituality.
Right.
They're so intertwined.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that we've had to talk about it a lot. But I think that's cool. It's like this. Maybe little by little, people will begin to see a little bit more of that, and maybe little by little, I will.
Yes.
I think remembering that first and foremost, we belong to the kingdom of God.
Yes.
And that that's how we're defined, and that's what we filter things through. I need to get up every day and do that. You know, that can help.
Yes.
I hope.
Yeah.
It's good.
This has been a great conversation with
Deep
you guys.
thoughts, buddy.
And I
Deep
know
thoughts.
that some of it is uncomfortable, and I get that. And maybe you don't agree with everything, and I get that too. So I appreciate even more your listening and your consideration of that. And as we say, we're just all kind of trying to figure out our own salvation with fear and trembling. But it's important, and these are important considerations. And if you have anything that is good in this spiritual walk with Jesus, then it demands our utmost attention and our utmost devotion and our utmost honesty and consideration. So that's all we're pressing for. And but we appreciate you guys being daring enough to listen to this. And if you want to talk about it, you can, on the podcast buttons there's a little thing that says send text message. You can send us a text and
love to hear that.
Call us whichever one you want to call us or whatever you want to do.
And if right now you're like, well, I'm going to pray for them, hey, we'll take it.
I'll take it every single day. So anyway, we love you guys. I so appreciate all the conversations we get to have with you guys about this stuff, even when we're away from the podcast and you find us and you email us and all that kind of stuff. And it's really encouraging.
It is.
And I love this community we have.
The feedback helps.
Please keep subscribing to the podcast if you haven't already, and like it. And if you think there's somebody who might enjoy it, please share it to them. If you think there's somebody who you just want to have this conversation with them, then send this to them, and
meet up
and you
for
guys
coffee.
can have a conversation, even if what you come up with is completely disagrees with us. That's okay.
Use it as a jump ball, as we say.
And then also, if you're not already, please check out the other podcast. There's the Dreamers Live podcast. It's all one word, so you can just find that in your search. And then there's a really fun podcast that we're doing called Got a Minute Mini Podcast.
Yeah, I'm really liking this one.
It's like 15 minutes long, and it pairs a funny story with an original song by Anjanette. And she even tells us right before the song kind of what she was thinking before she wrote the song. And so you have context right before you hear it, and it's a cool thing.
I like it. It takes one of the chapters from your book, A Funny Story, and then we find a song that kind of correlates. And probably since we've had a lot of the similar life experiences, they do correlate. But it's like a nice little, get your sandwich
and it's a mini
and have a couple
podcast, so it's like 15 minutes long, so you can listen to it in lunch
it's
break.
low commitment, guys.
Yeah.
It's like a coffee date. It's
like
speed dating.
Right. That's painful. Okay. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks for listening to the Mixed Up Mystics podcast, and please join us again. We'll be back soon.
See you soon.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening. We'd love it if you would like and subscribe to the podcast and then share it with the people you know. We want to include as many people as possible in the conversation. Thanks. This has been a production of Pioneer Dream.